I've had a couple of patients recently come to me with a rather interesting chief complaint, and it's, "Doc, I feel like I'm getting dumber." I kid you not. And it's usually for my younger patients. And perhaps you know where I'm going with this, but yes, it has to do with their AI use, technology use in general, actually. And what they're describing to me is they're feeling less focused. They're not able to complete homework assignments, and they're not feeling prepared for some of the challenges of the workplace. I've had students tell me it's been years since they've completed a homework assignment without using AI to some degree. And anything requiring sustained mental effort is proving increasingly challenging for people. And as a psychiatrist, I am definitely worried that the most fundamental thing to being human, our brain, our ability to reason, be creative, is atrophying. It's growing weaker. We're outsourcing it to technology, to AI. And so our own innate abilities to do this is growing less and less. And will that have large societal implications in the future? I don't know, maybe. So in today's video, I want to take a step back. I want to take a look at what exactly am I seeing clinically? What are some of the concerns over outsourcing our brains, our minds, our creativity to AI? And what are some ways to guard against that? And for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. I'm Dr. Robert. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. And on this channel, I like making various mental health educational videos. So if you like today's video, please like and subscribe and check out some of my other videos. I really appreciate it. So first off, let me clarify. There's nothing wrong with offloading effort to technology. We've been doing that for centuries as humans. It's how we've advanced. It's how we've been able to incorporate dishwashers to no longer have to do the dishes, and all these conveniences of modern life that give us free time, give us more time for creativity and time with friends, family. All of that is thanks to technological advances, so nothing wrong with that. But I think AI is different, and that's kind of what's scary about it, is because it doesn't free us up for only higher order thinking. It also takes over a lot of our thinking. It increasingly removes cognitive effort itself. So AI advances don't just help us do more, which they definitely do, but they also tempt us to think less. And that's what I'm concerned about. Now I want to focus on the concept of cognitive friction. This is a really important point. Cognitive friction is the mental effort we have to wrestle with whenever we have to think about something, do something mentally that isn't completely straightforward. It requires some effort, some problem solving. And you're definitely familiar with it. The discomfort of not knowing how to do something well, or not knowing the answer immediately, or struggling with some confusion, not knowing what the next step is. It's a process that's definitely frustrating, right? We've all experienced it, especially in school, when we're starting work, jobs, but it's also an important process because it's how our brains grow. It's how they develop. It's how they get smarter, how we get smarter. And that's what I'm seeing in some of my patients, some of the younger patients coming in, is they're a new generation that's had the opportunity to offload a lot of their thinking to AI over the past few years. So in high school, I've literally had people tell me this, that they haven't written an essay, honestly, in years. The temptation to not do it and then to focus on friends, video games, scrolling on social media, binging on shows, that's the much easier path, right? And I'm sure I would have done the same thing if I were them. If I were a high school student these days, I definitely wouldn't be writing my essays, I can tell you that. I remember when I was a chief resident in residency, I think one of the biggest skills I had to learn was how to craft an email. How to be very political in an email to make sure you're hitting all your audiences, getting the right tone across, drafting it with your co-chief resident, and that was definitely a learning curve, and I think a very good one because it taught me how to write a good email for various audiences and be effective in communicating. But today, if I need to write an email that's a little bit difficult, first thing I do is I write it out. It's not kind of a rough draft that's really, really rough, say the kind of tone I want, and throw that into an AI chatbot, right? And then it spits out a professionally written, great email with the exact tone that I'm looking for. And if anything is off, I can tell it to fix it. So I've kind of offloaded that skill, and I'm thankful I was able to develop it, but I'm sure if I had to write an email now without the use of AI, I'd be more rusty with it than maybe I would have been a few years ago. And I'm curious if anybody watching this has any similar experiences with something like that. If you do, definitely leave comments down below. I'd love to hear about it because I'm sure many of us have had that experience of losing a skill because we've offloaded it too often to AI. In the prior video, I talked about GPS, and that's definitely directions. Knowing street names is something that less and less people know how to do because we have GPS. Just put it into your phone and you can be directed anywhere in the world. And I would argue that's kind of fine, right? Because it's not that big of a loss. But creating sentences, communicating with other people, that's a little bit of a higher order function that I suspect will have impacts not just on emails, but on your ability to be professional, communicate with others, even internally create your own monologue, your own stream of consciousness being affected by that. Now, when my patients come to me with this, what gives me some hope is they are actually noticing this. They are telling me that they do see this as a problem. They're anxious about it because they realize there's some guilt, some shame over, well, now I'm going to college. Now I'm going into an actual corporate job. I've been hired, and I feel like I might actually not know what they think I know. I'm not able to do what my degree may suggest I'm able to do. And on top of that, even more so than just with social media in the past, they have an even harder time focusing, even harder time sustaining mental effort on simple tasks. And they just feel more overwhelmed, more burnt out at work. And I do wonder if that's going to be a trend that we're going to keep seeing of less work hours for people, less demanding things that they have to do, but people nonetheless feeling more burnt out, more exhausted, more frustrated with their work because their ability to tolerate the stress is growing less and less as they offload a lot of this mental friction towards AI, technology, and other things out there. So next, I want to introduce this concept of being anti-fragile. So I read this book called Antifragile by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And he makes some really interesting arguments that I think are very applicable to what we're seeing now with technology use. So I want to go over that with you. Basically, the argument is this. There are certain things, certain systems, objects, things like the human mind as well, that get stronger with increasing friction. Of course, right, it's kind of a U-shaped curve, meaning that there's diminishing returns if you go past a certain point and even detrimental effects. So you don't want too much friction in life, but you want some. A good example in the book is even a tree. So certain trees, if there is no wind, if there aren't any environmental factors causing issues around the tree, such as the wind, soil inconsistencies, things like that, the tree itself won't be able to grow. It has to face some challenges to grow strong enough to actually form into a full tree. This is very applicable to the human species, right, which requires a lot of mental friction growing up and in adolescence, even adulthood, in order to be capable of its full maximum potential. And if that's not there, if there isn't friction growing up, if there isn't trial and error, learning through mistakes, then learning doesn't really happen. The mind doesn't grow fully fortified. And it's just like muscles, right? Muscles require a lot of challenge in order to grow stronger. Bones need the weight of gravity and some stress on them in order to grow strong. And the immune system is another great example. If we're not exposed to germs and other environmental factors growing up, then we grow up with a very weak immune system. Our immune system never trains, never learns. And our minds are no different. They require constant challenges, constant mental friction in order to grow strong. So a mind protected from effort grows very fragile. I've even wondered this, there's no data backing this up, but it's something I've thought about is, I get the two extremes of patients sometimes when I work with severe anxiety. Some of them, they've had really traumatic childhoods. So I see a lot of PTSD, high anxiety states in that population, understandably so. And that kind of makes sense. I won't go further into that. I think that's an intuitive assumption for most of us. A lot of us clinicians will also see patients who supposedly had these great childhoods, right? Nothing went wrong. And yet they have such high anxiety states, terrible social anxiety, just constant baseline anxiety, and any challenges just create this increasingly high, out of proportion level of angst. And when you do continue to dive into their childhood, it is free of any trauma, any bullying, a lot of support, but almost a little bit too much support. It's like they were, I don't want to use the word coddled, but it's definitely the word that comes to mind. And I wonder if that's also kind of impacting people as well, if there's too much safety. I also recently read The Anxious Generation, great book, definitely check it out if you haven't. And the author there also talks about, one, the use of social media, and that's impact on negative mental health outcomes, but he also writes about the lack of, rough play, of free play in children, kind of this coddled childhood that kind of came into presence in the 90s, early 2000s, and that's persisted, of a lot of protection around children, not being able to play on their own, and the kind of this overprotective parenting that has also led to increased anxiety. Just kids not feeling sure of themselves. I think that's another example of how overly protecting yourself from challenge can negatively impact your mental health. And I definitely can see a role of AI there too, right? Just reducing your cognitive load, the challenge you have every day, and that then negatively impacting your distress tolerance at baseline, potentially even in the future leading to more anxiety and depression. Definitely, that's not something that evidence has pointed towards yet, but I do worry about that. I worry it will make people less self-sufficient, less able to tolerate any changes in their lives, any upsets, grow more anxious, just that baseline, and have a harder time problem solving things as well. And then that taken to the next step is I think they're going to look more and more potentially towards other things to tell them how to think. That'll be an easier step than to think for themselves, right? So subscribing more readily to other movements without fully understanding what's at play, because that's just cognitively easier, less cognitive demand than having to think through evidence, through things yourself. But I don't mean to be apocalyptic about this. I think there's a lot of hope as well. People are getting frustrated with this. They do want more challenges in their life. They want to reduce the boredom that they're experiencing because of this. And like I've mentioned in prior videos where I talk about technology and its impact, my patients are sick and tired of it. They don't want to continue subscribing to outsourcing more and more of their life, their attention, their time to these platforms. After all, people like being challenged. They like games. They like to problem solve. It's an inherent thing that gives us a sense of satisfaction. So I don't think that's going to be lost. I think that's going to be maybe to some degree, there'll be a temptation to abandon it for a little while, but we'll definitely come back to it. It'll definitely be a cornerstone of who we are as a species. Here's my little call to action. I think next time you're considering having AI do something for you, right? Whether that be write an email, give you recommendations for restaurants, but whatever it is, maybe take a moment and pause and think to yourself, do I have to outsource this? Or will it be more entertaining, more challenging, more of a growth opportunity for me to do it myself? And maybe next time I'll use technology, but this time I'm gonna challenge myself. I'm gonna grow from this experience. Who knows, maybe you'll even have fun doing it. So I wanna leave you with this. The goal of technology should be to expand the human experience, not quietly replace it. So please, leave some comments down below. I'd love to hear maybe what are some of the things you've outsourced, what are some of the things you wanna maybe pick back up from AI to bring back into your life that you wanna do yourself again. Any thoughts, comments, greatly appreciated. Appreciate your attention watching to the very end, and I hope to see you next week. Thanks.